Well, the Prime Minister is defending his decision to invite Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the G7 summit later this month in Alberta. Carney says given India's large economy and the discussions that will be had at the G7, it makes sense for India to attend, even though the RCMP has accused the Modi government of murdering and conspiring to murder Canadians.
And in addition, bilaterally, we have now agreed, importantly, to continued law enforcement dialogue. So there's been some progress on that. It recognizes issues of accountability. I extended the invitation to Prime Minister Modi in that context, and he has accepted.
This will be Modi's first visit to Canada following allegations last fall from the RCMP. The Mounties laid out evidence that agents of the Indian government played a role in widespread violence in Canada. Just over a year before that, then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stood in the House of Commons to say Canada had evidence linking Indian agents to the killing of Canadian citizen Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Surrey, British Columbia. India has denied the allegations. British Columbia Liberal MP Sukh Dhaliwal joins me now. Mr. Dhaliwal, it's good to see you. Thank you for making the time today.
Good to see you as well, David. Thank you for bringing me up.
You're the MP for Surrey Newton. This is the area where Mr. Nijjar was killed. What is your reaction to Narendra Modi being invited to the G7?
I personally don't support it, but when it more importantly is my constituents. You know, when I'm hearing from them since this morning, I have tens and hundreds of calls and messages, and they are concerned. They're concerned about the safety. They're concerned about the justice, and certainly, you know, when it comes to fundamental right and delivering justice for the victims, it's non-negotiable. So, at any cost, you know, that cannot be negotiated. Indian government has to come clean, because if you look at RCMP, they have clearly said that agents of India. They have a credible evidence that agents of India are involved in assassination of Mr. Nijjar. And Justice Hogue's inquiry has clearly said that India is the second biggest the country that influences you know, our democracy, intervenes into the lives of people. So that has come clearly from all sources. In fact, CBC has clearly said it as well. So it is out there. They have to be held accountable on this particular thing.
Well, and certainly there's been no statement from an intelligence agency, the government, law enforcement, that the campaign of transnational repression has stopped, even since the RCMP made their claims public. So you would assume it is still an ongoing reality. So I wonder what you think Prime Minister Carney should have done here, because this is not a nation-to-nation visit. It is the G7, which gives it a slightly different context. But what have you said to the Prime Minister, to his people, and what do you think he should do?
Basically, I have already said, you know, when it comes to fundamental rights, when it comes to delivering justice, it's non-negotiable. And that is the way we should be, and that should be the message.
But should he rescind the invitation?
Now he has given the invitation. He got to make sure that Prime Minister Modi admits it and delivers the information that we need to, so as the victims have the justice. Because when it comes to Canada, this is what I'm hearing from my constituents as well. They are telling me that Canada is the country of law. Canada is the country who championed human rights. Canada is the country that believes in the justice for victims, and those are the fundamental. That's what my constituents are asking, and that's exactly what I'm delivering.
Okay, but have you heard anything back from the Prime Minister? When he was asked about this today, Mr. Dhaliwal, he said, essentially, India as a country deserves a seat at the G7 summit, whatever you think of Mr. Modi and the way he runs his government, and that on the bilateral relationship, they were trying to reset things, and part of that was a conversation about cooperation on law enforcement and security issues. Have you heard anything back from the Prime Minister or his staff about your concerns, and what did you make of his explanation today?
I haven't heard any formally either from the Prime Minister or his staff. The message is very clear. Message is we have to advance diplomatic ties. No two things about it. We have to go ahead with our trade ties, people-to-people relation. But right now the issue is very clear that a Canadian was assassinated on a Canadian soil at a place of worship, who was my constituent, and I'm here to deliver. But my constituents are asking for one thing. They want the justice. They want to make sure that before Prime Minister Modi was invited to G7, we should have asked him to take a full responsibility and deliver that he and his government will cooperate when it comes to providing justice to Mr. Nijjar and his family.
Okay, so that has not been fully agreed to at this point. If that agreement or that promise from Mr. Modi doesn't get delivered at the G7, will it have been a mistake?
Certainly, that message has to be very clear. That it is Canada, right? We cannot tolerate any interference from any of the foreign agents, irrespective whether they are from India, China, Russia, Iran, or any other countries. And that's why I brought in my motion M112 forward, that to stop that and to respect that. The government brought in Bill C-70 to deal with that situation, so we are able to provide our law and our intelligence agency the tools to deal with that foreign interference. And in fact, that was alive and well here in Canada, and Justice Hogue has made it very clear. RCMP has clearly said that there is a credible evidence that the agents of India were involved in killing a Canadian citizen. So when it comes to, as I said earlier, fundamental rights and delivering justice is non-negotiable.
Okay, Sukh Dhaliwal, we're out of time. I want to thank you for joining us today. That's Sukh Dhaliwal, the Liberal MP for Surrey Newton. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go big picture now and discuss where Canada-India relations can go from here. Vina Nadjibulla is the Vice President, Research and Strategy at the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada. Vina, it's good to see you again. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for the invitation, David.
You had said earlier that inviting Narendra Modi to the G7 was a strategic necessity. It seems like the Prime Minister agrees. Well, what do you make of this move today?
Yes, you're absolutely right. It was a difficult decision, and we heard from the MP for why it was a difficult decision, but it was a necessary one, and I'm glad that the Prime Minister has made it. India is an important actor on the world stage. Fifth or fourth largest economy, an important voice for the global South, has been invited to the G7 since 2019. And it's important for India to be at the table because the discussions that the G7 are going to have with a larger network of partners have immediate implications for India and need India to be then implemented and followed up on. So I think because G7 is a multilateral forum and Canada is a chair, as a chair, Canada needed to invite India, but I think also bilaterally it's important because it sets the stage for the long road that's ahead in rebuilding this relationship and finding justice and accountability for the serious concerns that Canada has, but also addressing concerns that India brings to the table.
Okay, let's just parse those two for a second and just focus on the G7. Narendra Modi has been invited to Canada, but it's not like it's an official visit to Canada, between India and Canada. It is to participate in that multilateral G7 summit. Could Mark Carney have not done that if the other G7 leaders really wanted Narendra Modi there because of the role India plays in the world economy?
Well, that's just it. In terms of the G7, we are the outlier because the other 6 members of the G7 are interested in deepening their strategic partnerships with India, deepening their defense, technology, and economic ties. In fact, every day there's a new announcement about either France or UK or US doing more with India. So having India there also matters to everybody else. I think there was a strong push from other G6 to have India at the table. And I think in order for Canada also to be able to show relevance on the world stage, we can't just engage in diplomacy with those whom we like. I mean, diplomacy is not a gift to our friends. It's not a concession. It's a necessary tool to be able to advance our interests and defend our values.
Right, but you heard there what Sukh Dhaliwal had to say, right? The MP for the riding where the assassination of Mr. Nijjar happened. The government of India has been credibly accused of transnational repression, and there's no indications that that campaign has ended. So you have the foreign minister having to say today that this doesn't signal Canada's putting commercial priorities over national security. The World Sikh Organization has called it a betrayal that undermines justice, accountability, and the rule of law. I get the geopolitics. The domestic politics on this is very difficult for the Carney government.
Absolutely. I mean, I understand what you're saying, which is why it wasn't an easy decision. But I think we can do multiple things at the same time. Now, we need to engage with India on the issue of foreign interference and transnational repression. And in fact, I think today we heard from the Prime Minister, both in the press conference as well as in the readout from the call, that there are now discussions at the law enforcement level. There's a legal process underway in terms of the criminal proceedings, but also for the first time, we're getting some signals that India might be cooperating when it comes to law enforcement engagement. So I think that's reassuring, and we need to watch that. In other words, in order for us to be able to get the kind of accountability that we want, but also to ensure that we deter this from ever happening again, because basically what we're trying to do is to make sure that this never happens again. For that to be the case, we have to deal with India. This isn't going to magically solve itself. So having India at the table, beginning a process of rebuilding the relationship, but also engaging at law enforcement level as well as official level with India is important. This is not saying that somehow we've forgotten what has happened. So this is not turning the page. It's rather continuing the process of finding a solution and accountability.
How much weight, though, should we put on that line about, importantly, they've agreed to continue a process of conversation about law enforcement cooperation? Because the RCMP and others have been able to talk to the Indian government. They just haven't gotten anything from it, or at least what they've asked for specifically, because you can process this thing for years and never get to the outcome that Canada wants and demands in a moment like this. So I'm skeptical on that one. How much weight do you think we should apply?
Well, I mean, it was a really short readout, and that sentence does stand out, and it has importantly in front of it. So I think clearly the signal there is that this is something that we should pay attention to. But I think also we are in a different moment, David. I don't have to remind you of that. We're in a very different world where every country is testing its assumptions about international relations. India needs to deepen partnerships with Europe, with Australia, Japan, and with Canada. So I think India is also in a different position than it was even 6 months ago. And of course, for Canada, it's also important for us to have reliable trading partners and diversify relations and reduce our over-reliance. So I think we are in a different moment. Sure. I think there has been some progress on India's side, even with the US. Remember, there was a parallel US case for which the investigation proceeded. So I think there's now a model in place for the type of mechanism that can be set up to give India a chance to kind of go through its process and essentially have accountability. But more importantly, I think, is to end violence and to make sure that this never happens again. I mean, organized crime is an issue for both countries, right? Extremism is an issue for both countries, which is why we need to have a dedicated mechanism to deal with this.
Okay, there's a reset and a recalibration going on global trade and diplomacy in a lot of directions. India, this being part of it, but also China, because we learned that the Prime Minister also spoke with the Premier of China, Li Qiang, earlier this week. And today the Prime Minister said that this is the start of a process of recalibrating the relationship with China. What do you make of this move? I know there's canola and fish tariffs they're trying to get lifted, but what do you make of the move and the fact that he spoke with the Premier as opposed to President Xi?
Well, it certainly has been a busy 24 hours when it comes to Canada and Indo-Pacific relations. A call with Prime Minister Modi, a call with Premier Li Qiang. So these are unusual times, and Canada is certainly upping its diplomatic game, which is a really welcome sign. I think we need to engage at the highest level with China, again, for the same reasons that I mentioned. We don't have to like the country or the leader to be able to talk to them in order to advance our interests. With China, we have specific immediate concerns when it comes to the tariffs on the agricultural products. And obviously, there's been a lot of pressure and calls from Premier Mo and others to do something about that, to be able to relieve the pain that farmers are feeling at the moment. So I think a key priority for Canada in making that call certainly was to start a process to discuss how to remove those tariffs. And that's what we saw in the readout. Now, I think what's interesting is that China's readout didn't really say exactly that point. It's talking about a much bigger sort of reset in the relationship. And I think we need to be really clear-eyed and strategic about how we approach this moment of recalibration. We can approach it from a position of strength. China needs us now. China needs our market. And we can be strategic and smart and coordinated, especially with our like-minded allies in Europe and in Asia.
Okay, it's going to be a fascinating G7 because America will also be part of all of that. Vina Nadjibulla with the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada. Always appreciate the time. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.